Hey, welcome to The Juggle is Real. I'm Andryanna, and we're about a week into summer over here. I feel like I've already lived about 3 different summers, like there have been moments that have been exactly what I hope they would be, like there's the sleeping in a little later, you got soccer, stopping at the library, going out for lunch together, kids laughing, having a good time, weather cooperating, and then coming home. And then in like 30 seconds, someone's yelling, someone's crying, someone's looking at someone the wrong way. There's bickering and tattling and shoving, and someone's starving, even though we literally just ate. I just remember sitting out on the back deck thinking like, okay, I'm already exhausted. This is like day 2 of summer, And so if you can relate, I think I get like this every year. And many of us, I feel like we have this expectation that once that last school bell rings, everything just magically shifts and we're supposed to feel relaxed. We're supposed to, just live in this beautiful summer world where the kids get along and there's this like lovely, slower pace and the pressure disappears. And that's what summer is, except, that's just not really how it works. And so I realized something as I was giving myself a little time out in the moment. The calendar changed, but like my nervous system was just not really on that schedule. We didn't just wake up the first day of summer holidays and just suddenly know how to just like switch into that routine and that pace and that rhythm. And my kids didn't either. Like we're all adjusting. And I think that's something we don't talk about enough, especially when it comes to like moving into something that's supposed to feel easier. There's so much talk about getting into the routine for, say, like a back to school, which is super important. But like summer and getting into holiday mode is also important too. And so when I was sitting out on the deck with my tea, giving myself a timeout, I just randomly shared a post on Instagram and like how I was settling into summer. It was a funny audio clip and it very much resonated with so many moms, especially, like very much on point. Because it's, like, of course, many of us are going on holidays and we're seeing beautiful beach days. And we had a Canada Day celebration. And so we had friends over and it was awesome and beautiful. And there's matching swimsuits and whatever. But real life can look a little different. It's like wet towels on the floor. It's trying to get work done or tidy or like just turn around and there's a mess and your kids are home more and you're hearing mom every 12 to 14 seconds. It's trying to make breakfast, clean up from breakfast, turn around and you're already making lunch and then everyone seems hungry all day and it's sibling arguments followed by hearing them laugh and 5 minutes later, and it's beautiful and it's messy. And I think if we're not careful, that expectation, I know for me, it can really just steal the joy from the season that we're actually living. And so today I want to talk about finding your summer rhythm, not creating the perfect summer, not, having an elaborate, crazy plan and having to check everything off this like beautifully curated bucket list, not making every day and every moment magical, but just finding a rhythm that actually feels good and works for your family. So for this episode, we are going to talk about the psychology of transitions, why the beginning of summer can feel surprisingly harder than we all think. Like it's exhausting. Why some simple structures still matter, even in this season of freedom. And then like a mindset shift that's already helping me enjoy this season a lot more. So I've kind of broken it up into 3 parts, and it's kind of how I'm going to be moving through this summer. So let's dive right in.
This is the Juggle is Real podcast. I hope you feel seen, that you realize your worth, lighten your load, and prioritize your own needs. As we hear from leading experts and well-known faces in the wellness, entrepreneurship, education, and motherhood space, I hope you gain insights, proven practices, and learn actionable tools to help you enjoy the juggle of work, family, and everything in between with a little less stress and a lot more ease, joy, and fun. Most of all, I hope you find what you need to simplify, streamline, and supercharge your own journey of better balance and self-love. Are you with me? Let's get started.
Okay, so just to begin, I feel like we need to just talk about why summer feels harder than we expect. And I think one of the biggest reasons that summer can feel disappointing is because we just immediately feel different, like almost overnight. School ends on Friday and then maybe you're already off somewhere or whatever. And then by Monday, we're supposed to feel like we're just like, ta da, like, I don't know, like in a sunscreen commercial, I don't know, or like some ad for sitting by the pool and relaxing. But psychologically, transitions, even positive ones, are surprisingly demanding. And if you or someone one of your kids are neurodivergent, you feel this on a whole other level. Like I can tell with things are changing, it can feel trickier for some of my kids, and for everyone in the house. Let's be serious, because there's researchers who study life transitions, and they have found that almost any significant change to our routines does require a mental adaptation. And that goes for good changes too. It goes for things like a vacation, or, say something at work is changing. Maybe you got a promotion, or maybe you're moving and it's a new house, or you're retiring, or like just like, the end of a school year, because suddenly everything changes. The schedule changes for your kids, especially, and probably for you too, even if you're still working out of the home full time. Like, you still have to manage like a whole set of other things. Meal times might change. Just like literally the season is telling us that we have to shift. The sun is out longer, the days are longer. No one wants to go to bed. Your young kids, if you have young children and they're still like trying to go to bed early, like they're not wanting to go to bed when it's still like blazing sun and a beautiful day out. Sleep is changing, and just like noise, the amount of noise in my house, like everything has changed, right? And so does the mental load, because on the one hand, yes, maybe we're not signing permission slips and there's not homework to work around, but there's different expectations, and even if we're like, bring it on, I can't wait for summer, it's just like we're trying to catch up, and your brain is working like on like a little bit of an overtime trying to adapt. And so thinking about this, reading about this, I found comforting, because instead of like, I had my moment sitting on the deck thinking like, why is this already so hard? And then kind of moving into like, okay, so like, we're moving into it. We're still just finding our footing. And you don't have to like pop into summer and everything has to be magical. And so there is a difference, because on the one hand, if you're feeling like this is so hard, it feels like a failure, especially since we're still early in the season. But if we're thinking, we're like, okay, we're still just like finding our footing, we're just still figuring it out, it's a bit of a change, that feels more human. That feels more like, okay, we're kind of all like just doing it together, And that part I think we can forget, because I know I just saw Jillian Harris on her Instagram stories like saying like summer is supposed to be relaxing and we should immediately feel relaxed, but that's just not something that arrives because the calendar has changed, and it's something we just kind of gradually have to settle into. And so there is a bit of a gap, this expectation gap. And there is another concept in psychology called the expectation gap. So it is literally that space between what our expectations are, like what we are hoping and expecting an experience to be, and then like what it actually is. And the bigger the gap, the more disappointment we often feel, and I think sometimes we can get like this around the holidays too, especially if you have like idealistic tendencies like me. So the bigger that gap between what we expect and what actually is can create some disappointment, can create a sense of stress and a sense of pressure and a sense of overwhelm. It's thinking about your holidays or planning a vacation for months, and it's like great to have something to look forward to. And sometimes it's wonderful, but then sometimes someone gets sick, or, immediately you're in the car and the kids are fighting, or you get to your destination and it pours rain, or like literally like on Father's Day, we had like the most beautiful day. And then it just torrential poured and my house started flooding again for the second time, or like I just saw some people we know just are on this like overseas vacation, and they realized when they were at the airport that they forgot one of their kids' luggage. Like, so it doesn't mean the trip is bad, right? It's just like not what you pictured. And so there's a little bit of a difference between expectations versus reality. And so I think just like in general, summer can be like that. We are sold this image, it's bare feet running in the sand, and it's popsicles, and it's like beautiful bike rides and campfires, and there's no mosquitoes, and it's carefree, and no one's s'mores are getting like burnt to a crisp. Then the parents are relaxed and we're all watching this beautiful golden sunset. And I mean, like those moments for sure exist. And like I have had those moments, like just sitting on the dock and like really trying to take in the beauty and like the wonder and enjoying our first summer here at our new house. So, yes, that all exists. And they also exist along, okay, we're washing towels like every second. Like there's bugs out and there's snack requests, and my son wants to eat cheesies for breakfast. And so then there's arguments, and the floors are dirty. And did I tell you that we got a new dog, and he's the best, but like he sheds a lot. He loves to swim, but then he's a sweat stinky dog in the house. And I'm trying to meet work deadlines, and there's appointments, and my one son, he's on his third time getting stitches just this year. And then my other son, we had to go take him for x-rays because he rolled his ankle, and just general appointments and going to see the optometrist. And the time that we didn't have during the school year, we're trying to do, fill in the gaps, and go see the dentist and all of that life stuff, and summer doesn't replace life. It just kind of changes the scenery. The weather is a little different. And so I think there is kind of like this, like big exhale. There's a little bit of freedom in remembering that, because, and I had a whole episode. I was actually going to share it as a replay last week because there was no episode shared last week. Sorry if you're hoping for one. Basically, it was just like trying not to be and create the perfect summer, but really it's like just giving ourselves permission to find that footing and our rhythm and like get into a new routine. So the next part of what I want to talk about, it really is kind of that, and one of my favorite podcast episodes that I recorded, and I actually had broadcast TV segments about this, was like the F words of summer. And the one that the biggest F word that I loved was finding freedom within form, and like, I still think about this phrase all the time. I feel like this was like a few years ago, but when summer arrives, we just assume that like freedom means getting rid of all the routine. And it's just like go with the flow. I think that was another F word too, but it's like just everything is just more free. There's no schedule, no structure, and just like summer, the freedom of summer. But that is wonderful. And we all are craving a little bit of freedom. But what I have learned, both as a mom and in like reading about it, and there's research about it, talking about it, is like freedom actually feels better. And we can embrace that freedom and that flow more when we are holding it within a bit of structure. There's something holding all the pieces together. And it's not being rigid. It's not like things have to go a certain way, but there's like a gentle kind of just something holding us, there's anchors. And for me, I feel this a lot, but children do so much better. They do really, really well when they know what to expect. And there is research about this. And if you have a child who is neurodivergent, or if you have ADHD, like having a predictable rhythm can help reduce stress and improve emotional regulation. So our brains are constantly just trying to answer one question, and it's like, what happens? What's going on next? What's happening next? What's the plan here? And so when everything is like, it's loosey goosey, everything is just kind of up in the air. It feels uncertain. And then like your brain has to work harder. And so it can feel challenging. And then that's where sort of like those pain points can come in more. And it doesn't mean that we have to have like a like rigid school schedule all summer long. It's kind of the opposite, but it's like, can we have a few anchors maybe throughout the day or throughout the week that can make things feel more calm? So maybe it is like having a little bit of structure to your week. So it's like, okay, like to help you, maybe it's like pizza day Fridays. Like at the school is like, we had hot lunches. Friday was always pizza day. I knew I didn't have to make lunches for the kids. Like keep that part of it. Or maybe it's like you're going to go to the library on Tuesday mornings, or there's going to be a morning walk, or like after lunch everyone has quiet time, and maybe it is reading, maybe it is they get some electronics, or maybe it is like after dinner it's like a bike ride, or like what I mean, like these little touch points. And it can be like fun things that are kind of like summer tradition things that your kids are going to enjoy. And it's not like just scheduling every single minute, but it's giving us anchors so that the rest of the day can provide us with somewhere to land. And so I've noticed this with our boys already. It was like day one, Monday of summer. I sat everyone down and I was like, okay, so we want to have a fun summer. We want it like, I want to be a fun mom, but like we do need to do some things. So we have our morning tasks, my kids, like, we're still getting into the rhythm. I'm not going to say every day is perfect, but it's like we have to make our beds. We have to get dressed, put our things away. If there's tidying to do, like we have to have breakfast that's not, cheesies. And like there's a little bit of rhythm to it. You know what I mean? Because when the whole day is just completely open ended, it sounds amazing in theory until like it's 10 a.m. and like someone says they're bored, or like everyone's still in their jammies and no one's eaten. And then someone gets frustrated. Maybe they've already had 3 hours of screen time, or like, the snacks are getting out of hand. There's wrestling happening, and just like, like it's just like too much. So a little bit of freedom, just held inside enough of a routine, a little bit of rhythm, gives everyone, including me, like I'm already like getting worked up about this, it gives everyone a chance to enjoy the day more. You know what I mean? And so before I get into the next thing, which is like our summer bucket list, I just wanted to mention quickly, and now I'm losing my train of thought. What did I want to say? Oh man. Oh, here's what I wanted to say. I do have a free download that is helpful for summer, because during the school year I have like a checklist, morning, after school, and bedtime checklists of the things that my kids have to get done. For the summer, I didn't want it to be super rigid of you have to, do your homework and empty your backpack, and all of those things are, unnecessary. But it's like, how do we want our days to go? So it's just basically like, there's pick some tasks for your morning, pick some tasks for your afternoon. And it's just like a visual chart, which again can help neurodivergent kids and younger children. It's like, how do we want our days to go? And you might have certain things you want to put in, but it's just some pictures. And so it could be like, so morning is going to be clean up, some tidying, maybe some playing at the park or going to the beach or whatever it is, building a puzzle of reading. Afternoon is going to be maybe some TV time. It's going to be maybe visit with a friend. It's going to be going to your sports or whatever it is. But it just helps, shows what the plan for the day is going to be. So it's for sure going to be in the notes for this podcast episode. I'm glad I remembered to shout it out. And it's just something that you can use if you're trying to find that summer rhythm, not in a rigid way, but in a more freedom within form way. And this brings me to our summer bucket list, because one thing that we've done this year that I've really loved so far is creating a bucket list for our family for the summer. And like before you picture something like beautifully designed or like something super elaborate or like some sort of like Pinterest thing, it's not what that is. It's very literally a list. We sat down when we had our little family meeting and I went over like the structure that we're going to include. And something that the boys helped me create was just like writing on a dry erase sheet some of the things we want to do this summer. And like, to be honest, there's nothing particularly extravagant or like elaborate on it. Like one of them was literally going to the library, going for ice cream, making s'mores, going golfing with their uncles who are professional golfers, like visit a new splash pad, something that's like not right in our neighborhood. Just like little things, you know what I mean? And things that, yes, we would probably just do anyway. But in creating that list, something interesting happened. And it was kind of just less about checking the boxes, but it was creating some direction, because inevitably someone's going to say like I'm bored or there's nothing to do, and then instead of me immediately feeling responsible for creating some sort of entertainment off the top of my head, it's like walking over to the list and I'm like, what do we want to do, what's doable for today? Or like, also it kind of is a motivator because it's like, okay, we want to go for ice cream today, cool, well, we do have to do our tasks, so let's make sure, like you tidy the rec room, and they're like, clothes are put away, or is there a wet bathing suit somewhere that has to be hung up? So it's like, motivating because we're checking off these things. It's visual. It's like giving everyone ideas, but it's not like these high pressured, like going to Disneyland sort of things. It's nothing that has to be like overly curated. And it's become less about me carrying the mental load of inventing fun every single day. So it's just like these things we can decide together. And so I didn't expect that. And I thought it would be like just this thing for the kids, but it turns out like my husband and I were like, cool, this is for us too. You know what I mean? And so there is some psychology, and there's like some pretty cool research on anticipation. And you probably know this already, just like from living life, but there are studies in positive psychology that have found that when you're looking forward to something, it can increase happiness like in your day-to-day life almost as much as the fun itself, So if you think about it, just booking the vacation, it could be like 6 months from now, but there's like that excitement in anticipating what it's going to be like. And I'm not saying like over expectations, but there is like that excitement before you leave. When you buy concert tickets, like you're going to like listen to that artist and create a playlist, and there's like just the enjoyment of the anticipation. I even like I'm having some friends over for dinner this Friday, like planning a dinner with friends. It could be a birthday. We had a Canada Day party, just like a weekend away, or going to someone's camp or cottage. Like our brains just do love having something positive to look forward to. And so I think that's another one of the reasons why this like summer fun bucket list has worked so well. Not because we're just like, we got to do it all, but it's like every few days it's like, okay, like what do we want to check off the list, and I will like be honest with you, so far we've checked off 2 things. Like we're still in the beginning of summer. I'm not saying like we have to do it all in one day, but it's like, yeah, okay, can we go to the splash pad this week? Or like, can we like plan when we're going to have the s'mores? Can we go fishing? Or like there's just that shared anticipation and excitement and something to look forward to. And none of it has to be expensive, like I've said this a few times, but like does not have to be an elaborate plan, but it's just like that anchor point again of like looking forward to something. And so we have also, you've got the bucket list, right? And as much as I've loved our bucket list, I found myself coming back to something that I've talked about in an older episode as well, which is the summer feel list. Okay. Because while the bucket list helps answer like, what do we want to do? The feelings list is really a lot deeper, because it doesn't necessarily matter what you do, because it's how do we want this summer to feel? And so when I sat with that question this year, the answer kind of surprised me. Like I want our summer to feel unhurried. I really do not like rushing. Like, so unhurried pace, even if there's things on the schedule, I don't want to be rushing. I want to feel connected to my husband, connected to my children, connected to my friends and family. I want to feel light and playful. I want to be a fun mom, not in every sense of the word, but like I want there to be some playfulness, some simplicity. I just like want to be present for the moments, and like definitely not perfection or like over productivity or like jam packed, I just want to feel those feelings. And so what's interesting is when, if you're going to jot down, and I invite you, jot down how you want to feel this summer, and you look at that list, I would say most of those feelings that you want to feel are not going to be requiring some very detailed schedule or elaborate plan. Like connection can happen, like sitting out in your backyard. Maybe you're going to have a campfire, or like you're going to have popsicles on the porch. Playfulness might look like literally putting the sprinkler out, having a water balloon fight, or like blasting music and you're going to have hot dogs for dinner, you know? And the simplicity might be like, yeah, it's going to be pizza day Fridays, or, you're not going to do that thing that was on the schedule because it's protecting everyone's energy and it's like super humid and maybe we're going to miss soccer tonight, and just like staying in and relaxing. And so I've started asking myself a different question before we say yes. And it's not like, does this sound fun? But will this help us with like how we want to feel this summer? Because it's not necessarily the same thing. Like going to an amusement park when it's 42 degrees and super humid and waiting 3 hours to go on a roller coaster, I guess that could be counted as fun, but like that's not going to make me feel like serene and relaxed. I can tell you that for free. And like maybe the beach day does sound amazing, but if, packing the car and hauling all the gear and keeping track of towels and there's sunscreen and snacks and there's sand in every crevice and everything is going to leave you so depleted, maybe today's not the day. Maybe like today you just go in the backyard, or maybe today the splash pad is going to be enough. Having a picnic at a nearby park, reading books. Like my kids actually love when I read to them still, even my older ones. You're like in the shade under a tree. I don't know what it is, but it's like sometimes we just chase the activity, the activity, the activity. But what we're after is really like a certain feeling. And often there's such like a much simpler path to getting to that feeling than just like activity after activity. And so this kind of brings me to like our childhood summers. And I know like the past few years we're talking about like we want our kids to experience the 90s summer, and like I get it, and I know there's like different camps on like, whether you're for or against or whatever, but I do completely understand why we miss that childhood summer feeling, right? It's the feeling. We remember riding our bikes until like it got dark. We remember the sprinkler. We remember building forts or making up our own games and like doing handstands and cartwheels in the grass for hours. And like when did you guys have ever the Dickie D's? It was like the guy on the bike who had like the little cooler attached to his bike, and he would drive down and it was like the popsicle, the ice cream man's here, like having a freezy, or like, just being outside all the time. And the more I've thought about it, it's like, I don't think we're nostalgic necessarily for the decade, but it's like the feelings we had, because it felt really spacious and there wasn't the same pressure to optimize every single minute. We did, of course, have room to be bored. I know there's talks about that. There was room to wander and imagine. And yes, I had my Super Nintendo, but it's like when we're talking about nostalgia, there's research that suggests that when we look back, those meaningful memories, we don't actually remember every detail accurately. And so if you're thinking back, you're like, yeah, our summers were perfect. It's not necessarily that they were. Like maybe you were bored, or maybe you were watching like Jerry Springer like every day. But we do remember sort of the tone to our emotions, like the feelings we had. Maybe there was that connection, there was some novelty. And like that's really what sticks, And so I feel like we are living, in this era where there is technology everywhere. And maybe the part that's encouraging isn't like we have to go back to every detail of what a 90s summer looks like, but it's like thinking like, okay, but if we can support those feelings, and it does mean that our kids aren't going to remember every single detail, whether we like made it to every attraction or like checked everything off a detailed list. It's like, okay, how are they going to remember how summer felt? You know what I mean? Or like maybe what we're creating all along is sort of some loose memories, but what they're remembering is how they felt. That's kind of what I'm trying to tap into, And so for like the last part of this episode, it's just like a few things I'm reminding myself about, and like that I want to just keep like rehashing and like telling myself this summer. It's like, okay, we're still sort of at the beginning of this summer season. Still very much figuring it out. There's, like I said, some great moments. We're still like, doing things around the house. There's, like I told you, the flooding. We're like, there's still things, there's been hard moments as well. But there have been moments where I thought like, okay, this is what I pictured. This is how I've wanted to feel. And then like, of course, there's moments where it's like, how is it only 10:30 and why is everyone screaming? And maybe it's because I'm in a quiet house, Thank you to my sister-in-law and brother-in-law for taking the kids. But like it's a little bit of both, Both can be true. Two things can be true. It can be hard and feel great at the same time. And it is like one of those things that like I guess you just learn over the years, and that's when I'm feeling overwhelmed is usually a sign that I need to make things a little smaller. We don't have to get bigger, more robust. We don't have to improve and get better, be more productive. It's like, how can we like reel it in a bit? How can we make things a little smaller? Because already, when we feel like we're failing at summer, our instinct is like, let's try harder. Let's like plan another outing. Let's buy something. Let's like get another activity and fill our schedules more. But it's like, okay, can we take a breath? Maybe we're not adding more. Maybe it's like, can we notice what's already enough? Can we notice what's around us? Can we like pull out something that we haven't done? Actually, one of the things on our bucket list is like have a games night. I don't know the last time we've played board games. It's been since the winter, So I'm just trying to remind myself of these things, like even just from the past week. And so maybe this will be helpful for you too. But like the first thing, it's like every single day does not have to be this giant memorable thing for this summer to be memorable. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to create the picture perfect days. But again, like when you're looking back to your own childhood, I couldn't tell you what happened on a random Tuesday in July. I remember little moments, I remember pockets, I remember Kool-Aid flavors. I literally remember my mom buying this like watermelon flavored powder for like a watermelon juice and feeling like a Rubbermaid like giant thermos. Like that's like a vivid memory. And like sitting at a very quiet corner of like a secluded beach, not like a crazy beach filled with people, like a quiet corner. Getting a flashlight was like a huge thing, like playing outside when it was dark and having a flashlight, having a sleepover with my friend who literally lived across the street from me. It's like remembering being so hot that we just huddled in the basement around the Super Nintendo, literally Super Mario Brothers. I just remember how it felt to be together. And so that's very different. So the second thing that I do want to just keep remembering is that boredom is not an emergency, and it can feel hard, especially if your kids are just like wanting to turn to their iPads or electronics, or they're saying, I'm bored, or I don't know what to do for the 15th time, and you're trying to get something done. It's not necessarily something to fix. And so, like, having something like that, like little summer routines chart gives them ideas. But research on creativity has found that those periods of unstructured time can encourage some imagination, can encourage some problem solving, a little more independence and playing independently. And so when our brains aren't constantly being entertained and there's not like flashing lights and like ASMR like all the time, they have to and they're forced to start creating, even if it does feel hard, and it will feel hard. But that doesn't mean every child, like, they're not magically going to become creative the second they say they're bored, like it's going to be tricky. Maybe they're going to have to wander around the house dramatically announcing how bored they are, and maybe there's going to be like a bit of a fit. I don't know, but I've noticed that if I don't immediately jump in to solve it, eventually something happens, like maybe they're going to go into the garage and find a random ball that they haven't used, or maybe they are going to like build a fort, or like the mini sticks are going to come out. And my son invented a whole new game with like a bunch of random things that we had outside, so like the siblings, as much as they're bickering, maybe they will come together and play. I don't know. It doesn't happen instantly. It's not going to be perfect every time. But usually, if you give it a minute, if you have the ability to do that, usually something good will come of it. And so that is a good reminder for me that I don't have to be like the cruise director and like, planning it all out and being like fun mom all the time. And then that brings me to the third thing is that, like, because I am home with the kids, my energy has to set the tone more than the plans do or the schedule. And it has been hitting me. So I will say, like, we are getting this new heating cooling system installed later this week, but we have not had air conditioning and there have been some super hot, very humid days. And so, yeah, I could be fun mom for a minute, but when it's 42 degrees and super hot in the house, I have nothing left in me to create that fun experience. Like, I am frazzled. I'm irritated, I am feeling overwhelmed, and then I create that energy and my kids are going to feel it. But if I can be like, okay, like, can we just chill? Let's have freezies for breakfast, maybe. I don't know. Like, can we go outside and catch some breeze? Can we feel a little more present? And that's kind of become like a thing, and we can kind of like ease into that. And so we did miss a soccer already last week. It was like the second practice of the summer. We already missed one. But like, it does remind me of something that research have found over and over again. And it's like, the kids are not going to remember every activity. They're not going to know that they missed a soccer practice in July when they're like in their 30s, right? They're going to remember the emotional experiences and feeling safe, feeling seen, being connected. And I feel like that is so much more encouraging because it does take the pressure off, because it means that presence matters more than perfection. Okay. And so let's just say this, like, one thing that I hope you don't take away from today's episode is like the idea that you have to like do what I'm doing and make a bucket list or use the chart I just talked about. But it's like your summer's going to look different. Your rhythm is going to be different from mine. You know what I mean? And like, maybe a bucket list is going to work for your family, but maybe not. Or maybe your family does thrive on adventures and like doing a lot. Maybe your happiest days are spent at home and you're like all like, chilling in the basement. Maybe your kids need a little bit more form, more routine. Maybe they need a little bit more flexibility, a little more freedom, right? Like, there's not one right way to do summer. And the goal is not like to look online and recreate someone else's version. It really is to just like discover your own rhythm and like just ask yourself, like, what is helping, what is working, and what's going to work for our family to feel connected or like laugh more or slow down, and what's going to protect our energy instead of really depleting and draining it. And what feelings and memories do we actually want to create? And so, like, it might be totally different than mine, and that's totally cool. That's exactly how it should be. And so, as we wrap things up for this episode, I just want to leave you with a thought. If the summer hasn't started and it hasn't looked in the way that you imagined, I just like, it's all good. You're not doing summer wrong. It's like, it's not over yet. You haven't missed your chance. You're just like figuring it out. You're settling in, just like we do with new seasons or like big changes, back to school. There's like a whole summer still ahead of us. There's still things that you can do with ease. There's still ice cream that you can eat or like a conversation to have, a walk to go on. Of course, there's going to be messes to clean up and sibling bickering, fighting to referee, and there's going to be the moments you're going to forget about. And then there's going to be those memories that you cherish so much with like every fiber of your being. And I'm going to cry, but like maybe this week, instead of asking yourself, like, what do I need to add to the schedule? Try asking, how do I want today to feel? How do I want this week to feel? And maybe the answer is calm. Maybe it is like adventurous or playful, connected, restful. Like, look for one or two small things that can help you create those feelings. Not 10 picture perfect Pinterest things, like just like one or two. Because we're not winning summer in one day. It's like a whole bunch of little ordinary moments that somehow, when you look back, they just feel so extraordinary and beautiful. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. And, if you want, I would be so grateful if you could rate and write a review for The Juggle is Real. Join me on Instagram. Maybe there's going to be some funny reels on the way. But I would love to hear from you. Can you reach out and let me know what is on your summer bucket list for your family? Or how do you want this summer to feel? What is your feelings list? So come send me a message. There is an email address in the notes for this podcast episode. Write a review, leave a comment. I do genuinely love hearing what's happening in your lives. And also, if you have any hair products that are going to help me with the nice beachy waves, I'm trying not to, I've got big hair. This is an audio only podcast, but I've got big hair. So send me a note. Let me know what I can use in this big coif. Until the next time, take good care. Give yourself permission to find your own summer rhythm. Like the juggle is real, but so is the joy waiting to be found in the middle of it in all those messy moments. Until the next episode, take good care.